I made this. I made this. I was inspired by all of the TBR games that I saw on BookTube. I was so excited to create a TBR game that felt personal for me, and so I decided to create one that was themed all around horror movies, and final girls. A lot of the TBR games that are out there are inspired by real life board games that we know and love. This game is inspired by Final Girl by Ryder Games, and it is essentially you play a final girl fighting against iconic horror movie villains, and I do have it in the background. I am just really excited to jump into this. I feel like, summer is the start of spooky seasons, so what better time to finally showcase my horror themed TBR game. This is a game that I will be playing all year long, not just during spooky season, because I love horror movies and spooky things all year long. So if you are like me and also enjoy a good spooky scary theme, you might like this game. Without further ado, I'm excited to show you how to play. So let's do a little showcase on what's inside. I made it really tiny, so this is the tiny little board. So here is the game board that I will be using to play, and I think I'm going to include digital files, so if anybody else is interested in playing, I will have that in the description, hopefully. And then I even created a little rule book. Everything's so tiny you can't really see it on camera. So all the elements that I'm using for my game as like game pieces and tokens and die, I just pulled from other board games that I have. The heart tokens and the Final Girl miniature I pulled from the actual Final Girl board game. So I'll be using the heart tokens to represent lives for my Final Girl and for my killer. I just have a D6 and a D8. Mostly the D6 will be used for this game. The D8 is a special die for special circumstances, and I will explain that in the rules. So this TBR game is going to be slightly more complicated than your average TBR jar where you just pull out a prompt and then choose a book. This is actually a game because I'm a game lover, so I wanted rules and a challenge and a game like element that could be played throughout the year. So you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a little bit more gamey. I was really inspired by Sylvia from Library Unbounded, and she plays her Lord of the Reeds TBR game, which I love. I love it so much. Her TBR game is my favorite because it is very gamey. And so I just felt like there is going to be room out here on BookTube for the game lovers that really like to combine those slightly more complicated game elements with their TBR challenge. So that being said, I'm going to go over some of the rules that you're going to find in the rulebook. Your objective for the game is to play as a final girl to choose your TBR for the month. Your TBR is complete when the killer has 0 lives. At the end of each month, you'll do a check-in stage, which is called the epilogue, to see if you actually survived your TBR or if the killer is gonna get resurrected. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to the beginning. So first things first, setup. What you want to do is shuffle each card deck and place them face down near the board. Okay, so these cards separate into 5 different categories. So you have your final girls, victims, killers, weapons, and locations. Then you're going to take your final girls deck and choose a final girl. You can either choose which one you want or shuffle and pick one out as random. It's up to you. Each final girl has a special perk listed on her card that you can use this month for your TBR. So for example, if you chose the cheerleader, her special perk says rally the squad. The first time you land on a victim space, you can save them without using a weapon. And that'll make sense as I explain the rules a little bit more and you start playing the game. Another thing you'll notice on each card is a prompt. So for example, when you choose your final girl for the month, if I chose the cheerleader, what I would need to do is choose a book to add to my TBR that uses this prompt. Essentially, your final girl is going to be your first book on your TBR. The next thing you're going to do is figure out who you're trying to get away from this month, which means who's the killer. Choose who you want to be the killer for the month by just selecting whoever you want to go up against, or you can shuffle and choose one at random, which I think is a little bit more exciting. So in this example, I chose the ghost card. Each killer has 3 prompts on their card. Each of the prompts represents one of the killer's lives, which I'll be using the little heart tokens on their card to represent as physical element. I think using those little hearts are an easy way for me to keep track You decide however you want to do it. So after drawing a killer card, what you're going to do next is choose one of their prompts and add a book to your TBR. You can choose whatever one you want. You don't have to go in order. So that will right off the bat eliminate one of the killer's lives. So after putting that book on your TBR, the killer will now be at 2 lives at the start of the game, before you even get to the game board. It sounds easy, but let's continue. Gameplay. So the first thing you're going to do after selecting your final girl and your killer for the month is place your final girl token on any killer space on the board. The killer space is represented by the puzzle piece, which is an homage to Jigsaw because I love the Saw franchise. And it says on the board which symbol represents what, so you won't get confused. Roll a d6 to move around the board clockwise. For every space you land on, choose which action to take. As you can see, there are 5 different space types on the game board: victims, locations, killers, weapons, and plot twists. I'll now go over what happens when you land on each space on the board and what actions you can take. When landing on a killer space, you have 2 options: escape or fight. To escape, you choose one unused killer prompt to add a book to your TBR and escape the killer's grasp. Killer loses 1 life. Or you can fight. To fight, use a weapon from your hand to fight back and injure the killer. Killer loses 1 to 2 lives, which means you check off a killer prompt for free or 2 prompts if you use the killer's matching weapon. Note, for free means you do not have to add a book to your TBR using that prompt. I know sometimes listening or reading rules is confusing, but if you're like me, you'll probably pick it up better once we start actually playing the game. It'll all start to make sense. Weapon space actions. You can either equip, exchange, or ignore. Equip. Draw a weapon card and add it to your hand. Add a book to your TBR using the prompt. You can only carry 1 weapon at a time. Exchange. If you already have a weapon when landing on a weapon space, you can discard your weapon and draw a new one. Take the book chosen with the previous weapon prompt off your TBR and exchange it with a book following the new weapon prompt. Or you can just ignore the weapon space, do nothing, and roll again. Note: if you've used your weapon to fight or save a victim, flip the weapon face down to show it's been used. You can now carry a new weapon. Victim space actions. Body count or saved. Body count means you draw a weapon card and place the card under the active killer, add a book to your TBR using their prompt. That means the killer has taken a victim. Otherwise, you can save them by using a weapon in your hand to save the victim. Add the saved victim to your hand for free. There is no limit to how many saved victims you can have in your hand. Location space actions. Hide. Draw a location card and add it to your hand. Add a book to your TBR using the prompt. Note, you can only collect 1 location per game, except the goth who can have 2 locations by using her perk. Exchange. If you already have a location when landing on a location space, you can discard your location and draw a new location, taking the old book chosen by that original prompt and replacing it with a new book chosen by the new prompt. Or you can ignore it, do nothing, and roll again. A plot twist space action is using a random generated to choose a book to add to your TBR. And you can use any random generator you decide. You can do a TBR jar, a color wheel generator, a random number generator, pick a book randomly off your TBR. This one's open to interpretation, so do whatever feels fun for you. The game ends when you defeat the killer. If the killer drops to 0 lives, which means no more available prompts on the killer card, the game is over and your TBR for the month is complete. And that's all you need to know to actually start playing the game. I know it kind of sounded like a lot and it might be confusing, but you'll pick it up as you go along. Hopefully it starts to make sense to you once I'm actually playing. There is another element called the second chance table, and that comes into play if you go through the epilogue and your final girl actually dies. You can roll on the second chance table to bring her back to life. And we'll go over that when the time comes, or if you're curious, you can just download the digital file and read it for yourself to see how that works. I'll go over how the epilogue works, just so you have an idea of what to expect, even though we don't need that right now to start the game. At the end of each month, complete the epilogue. 1. Lose a life for every book on your TBR that you did not finish. 2. Hide. If you completed a location prompt, regain 1 lost life. Note, if you gained a location for free as the goth, it counts as a completed location. 3. Sacrifice a victim to save yourself. You can use a saved victim card to regain 1 lost life. However, this will require you to start your next TBR with +1 book using the victim's prompt. Note, there's no limit to sacrificing victims. That's your choice if that's the route you want to go. 4. If your final girl loses all her lives, the killer is resurrected, and you must start your next TBR with +1 book using one of the resurrected killer's prompts. Shuffle the killer back into the killer deck. The final girl card is removed from the game. Unless you roll on the second chance table, which will bring her back to life, but every final girl only gets 1 second chance. And then 5. If your final girl has at least 1 life remaining after going through all the epilogue steps, you have defeated this killer. This killer is not shuffled back into the killer deck until you have defeated all other killers that remain. So if you wanted to defeat every single killer in the deck, you would play for 14 months, because I've included 14 different killers. Okay, now that I've gone through all the rules with you, let's play the game.
After setup, the first thing I need to do is choose my final girl. So I'm going to shuffle the cards and pick who is my final girl for this month.
Okay, so this month I got the good girl as my final girl. So her perk is hard to kill, which means I start the game with 4 lives instead of the normal 3. And her prompt is add a classic or closed door romance to your TBR. I'm gonna go with a classic that I've been wanting to pick up for a while now. It is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. So I grew up watching the movie adaptation with my mom as a little girl, and we have watched that movie so many times, and I am just in love with it. It brings so much nostalgia to me. I love the character of Anne Shirley. She is probably one of my favorite literary characters in all of fiction. So I didn't realize this book was actually first published in 1908. The setting takes place in the late 1800s, and if you don't know the story of Anne of Green Gables, it is about a young 11-year-old girl. She is a redhead, which is a very prominent detail of the story. She comes to live with Matthew and Marilla, who I believe they live on a farm or something, and they want to adopt a child to help them around the house. Initially, they wanted a boy, but the orphanage sends them Anne instead. And that's where it all starts out. So I've never actually read the book. I've only seen the movie, so I'm really excited to see what is different in the book, and I'm probably gonna want to watch the movie again, because now that I'm thinking about it, I'm just like, there's moments in this book I know that are sad, they're emotional, they're beautiful. Like the way that Anne talks is she's a big lover of poetry, so she's so lyrical in the way she speaks, and I'm actually excited to see that in text and see how the author actually wrote her on the written page. Every time I go to the bookstore, I'm trying to find like a beautiful edition of this book because I don't own it. I want to own like a really beautiful copy of it, but I'm excited that my game has now given me reason to put this in my pile of possibilities for the month of August.
The next thing I'm going to do is take the killer deck, shuffle it, and draw a card to find out who the killer is for this month's game.
My killer for the month of August is the nun, so I have to pick one of her 3 prompts to add to my TBR. Let me see which one I'm going to choose. Okay, she has 3 really good prompts. I think I'm going to start with number 2, which is add a book to your TBR that features an exorcism or paranormal investigators. Immediately, I already know which book I want to read. Let me go grab it off of my shelf. So this book has been really high on my TBR for a while now. So it is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. So I have to read you this blurb on the bottom to give you an idea of what this book is going to be about. It says, if The Exorcist had been authored by Tina Fey instead of William Peter Blatty, it might have borne an uncanny resemblance to what Grady Hendrix has accomplished with my best friend's exorcism. I'm excited to see if I enjoy his writing, and I'm really hoping that I do. I have yet to read one of his books. I specifically wanted to read this one because it has 80s vibes, and I love the 80s. Plus, I love the cover. There's so many colors on it, and I just think it's a beautiful cover. It's very nostalgic, and I also heard that it takes place in the summer. So I think this is a perfect August read, and I'm really excited to put this one on my TBR, and hopefully I can finally get around to reading it this time.
Now that I've added one of the killer prompts to my TBR, I will remove one of the killer's lives. This leaves me with 2 prompts, which means the killer has 2 lives left. Now I'm ready to make roll number 1. And I rolled a 4. I placed my final girl token on any killer space on the board of my choosing, and now I'll move clockwise around the board 4 spaces. And I landed on a killer space. Because I don't have any weapons, my only option is to escape the killer's grasp, which means I have to choose another one of the killer's prompts to add to my TBR, and the killer loses another life.
So I think I'm gonna go with prompt number 3, add a religious horror book to your TBR. Let me go grab it. I think it's only appropriate that I've been reading a lot of like possession exorcism books, but I have yet to read the mother of them all. I need to go back to the origin story, if you will. I feel like I don't even need to explain to you why I desperately need to read this. I still can't believe that I have not read this yet. I've seen the movie a million times. I think it's high time that this one goes at the top of my TBR, and I'm putting this on the list.
Roll number 2. I rolled a 3. I moved 3 spaces on the board, which landed me on a location space. This means I get to draw a location card and add it to my hand. I'll add a book to my TBR based on that location's prompt. Location cards come in handy during the epilogue phase. If I read the book that's associated with this location prompt, I can hide instead of losing a life during the epilogue phase.
My next roll landed me on a location space, and I drew the card Haunted House. So the prompt for that is add a book to your TBR that has a house on the cover. Give me a second while I look through some books that I have been wanting to read and see if there's actually a house on any of them. I'm gonna go with Everything She Does Is Magic by Bridget Morrissey. Okay, so this may or may not be a stretch. I couldn't decide if these looked like business fronts or houses, but I'm gonna go with the idea that it's a house because it looks like they are walking down the street trick-or-treating in their costumes. And where do you trick-or-treat? In a neighborhood with houses. So I'm gonna say these are houses on the cover. So this book has not actually been published yet. I'm so excited because I got approved for the arc of this book. I believe it comes out September 9th. So this is perfect for me to add to my TBR for August because I need to get this book read because I do have a list of arcs that I need to get to before they are actually published. So I'm kind of behind on my arc. So I'm trying to see if they fit any of the prompts. Fingers crossed I can actually like squeeze them in to the game so I don't just have like a bunch of extra books I need to read on top of my game pile of possibilities. You know what I mean? All I know about this book is that the cover is so cute, and that's what drew me in to immediately apply for an arc. It looks like a sapphic romance. It's a young adult. It's Halloween vibes. I believe there's a witch and a princess fairy, just judging by the cover. I actually don't know what the synopsis is, other than it's Halloween time. It's kind of giving Gilmore Girls Wicked vibes is what they said like in the little blurb, and I actually didn't want to read anything else because I find that a lot of the times, especially with a romance, the synopsis gives away too much and then I just feel like I already know what's gonna happen. So I want to go into this one blind, so I will get around to reading it and then let you know what it's about after I get through it.
Roll number 3. I rolled a 4. I landed on another killer space, which means that this was my final roll of the game. I now add the third and final prompt, from the killer card, which means the nun loses her last life, and my TBR for August is complete.
My next roll ended up being my last roll because I landed again on a killer space. And because I never landed on a weapon card, I am forced to escape the killer again by picking the third and final prompt on the card, which removes the last life from the killer. So the third prompt here is actually prompt number 1, and it's add a book to your TBR that involves a cult. I really don't mind this prompt. I love a book that has a cult in it, so I'm actually excited to think of a book that's going to fit this prompt. Let me take a second to think of the fifth and final book that I'll be adding to my TBR. For this prompt, I'm gonna have to go with The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. I heard that this book has some culty elements to it, and I also heard it's perfect for the summer. So I'm trying to get the last of all the good summer season reads before summer is over. So I think fitting this one into August is going to be great. I really don't know much about it. I think the main character might be gender fluid, which is really cool and interesting. So I'm excited to go in this one a little bit blind. All I know is there's like this group of girls and they call themselves the Honeys, and I'm just thinking, like, is it kind of like the Heathers? I really don't know. I don't know much about it. I just know the cover is gorgeous. So again, it's another like cover grab for me. So I'm just hoping the quality of the story is as awesome as the cover on the outside. So we'll see. I know a lot of people have been reading it recently, and I'm excited to finally jump on that bandwagon and see if it's as good as people were saying it is. I do have one more additional book that I need to get to in the month of August, and that is my Q3 In the Void book club pick, which is Revenge by Yoko Ogawa. So I want to read this before the group discussion on September 4th, I believe. So I need to squeeze this one in. Luckily, it's rather short, so I don't think it'll take me too long. It is a compilation of interconnected short horror stories, which sounds really interesting. The author is a Japanese woman, and this is a translated work, originally published in 1988. I really love the cover of this book. I went out of my way to find this cover specifically online and ordered this one from avebooks.com. And I'm curious to know how strawberries are relevant to the story. It's very beautiful, and I feel like it matches my lipstick today, which is awesome. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching me play my brand new TBR game called Final FMC. I had a lot of fun, and I'm excited to keep playing it every month. I hope you'll join me next month to find out if my final girl, the good girl, actually defeated the nun killer, or if the nun is going to get resurrected and live to kill another day. Hopefully my final girl actually survives and doesn't get killed, which means I'm actually gonna have to read the books on my pile of possibilities. We'll see how it goes. But this was a lot of fun. I know the rules are a little bit more complicated than your average TBR game. Don't forget that if you're interested in playing the game for yourself, reading the rules on your own, or just seeing what other cards are in the decks, I'm leaving the download link in the description below. So go ahead and check it out, and I'm excited to see you next time. Bye!